Hi, I'm Greg from Second Thoughts East Yorkshire. Given the worrying factors of day-to-day living at the moment, it's understandable why many people are feeling fearful, both for now and for the future. Generally, the three big worries in life are health, wealth and safety, and all three are of major concern right now. This is plus, of course, any other personal issues that people are going through, such as your own health problems, maybe relationship issues, or housing problems. But the three major worries that people are talking to us about are: one, the rising cost of living, particularly around the cost of heating and power, but also indeed the cost of food, fuel and everything else. Two, the worry of COVID, of catching it, how it may impact on you, and maintaining income during any periods of sickness. And three, the war in Ukraine, the plight of the people who live there, and fear of the impact of that on others and indeed on us. There are some actions that you can take to manage any fear that may arise, but it really is important not to beat yourself up for feeling afraid, for worrying. It's perfectly natural. Always remember that how other people choose to act themselves is largely beyond our control. All we have any control over is what we do ourselves. Feeling low doesn't help anyone else, doesn't help others, and impacts on your own health significantly, both physically and mentally. My first piece of advice is generic, it's general, and that's to reduce the amount of time you spend watching the news on TV, or listening to it on radio for that matter. Shocking, upsetting news attracts viewers, and most news broadcasters screen upsetting imagery, which can cause your mood to plummet down like a sinking ship. So try to limit yourself to watching the news once a day. Some issues interact. For example, the terrible conditions in Ukraine because of Russia's military actions, the COVID pandemic, and the current government's fiscal policies are all impacting on rising costs. So let's look at the three issues one by one. We can't cover every single element of all of them, and the issues are affecting people in many different ways. But there are a few things that you can do to help yourself. So first of all, let's look at the rocketing rise in the cost of living. Start by working out your budget. If you've never really done this before, there are a lot of free templates you can access online. Just search for budget planner on the internet and you'll see a lot. There is an excellent free one, plus a lot of information on how to cut costs and save money on Martin Lewis's Money Saving Expert webpage. So if you Google Money Saving Expert, you'll come across that. So what is a budget? Well, basically it's a document that you use to show how much money you have coming in and how much is going out. If there's more going out than coming in, then you need to consider if you can increase income or cut down expenditure. It sounds easy, doesn't it? But it can be a real challenge. For many of us, increasing income isn't possible. Perhaps you may be on benefits and they're restricted. But for some, it could be an option, perhaps through taking on other work, or perhaps renting a room out to a lodger, for example. But any action like that does need a lot of prior thought. It needs thinking through, it really does, and it needs checking out thoroughly. For advice around that sort of thing, you can contact the Citizens Advice Bureau, and they're also very good at being able to do a benefits check for you, so you can make sure that you're claiming the things that you're entitled to. The other way of balancing your books is to reduce costs, and that could be through changing your regular supermarket, for example, to the supermarket chains who sell goods at reduced prices. Now, on a personal level, we often use them, and the products are good, and it does help to cut costs significantly. Another way to reduce outlay is through cutting back on things that you may have taken for granted before, which don't seem particularly extravagant, but things like, for example, having a coffee and a bun while you're out, or perhaps an occasional takeaway. Now, sadly, for many people, they haven't been an option at all. They've not been able to have luxuries like that for some time. So another idea is to check food banks out. Now, that might sound like an action that you'd never have considered before, but believe me, thousands of people are doing that now through necessity. Food banks have been set up because of need, and never ever feel guilty about using them. The charities that run them, supported by donations from food retailers and donations of money from the members of the public, do the work to help our communities. They're run by people who care about you and your family, who care about the community. So please don't disregard them out of hand. They can literally be lifesavers. It would be a much better life if they weren't needed, but sadly they are, because poverty is all around us now, and it's not being managed well. The second major issue that people talk to us about is COVID. Now, COVID's been with us now since early 2020, coming in waves, but it's as prolific now as ever, perhaps even more so. I managed to avoid it for 2 years personally, but as I record this MP4 even, I've tested positive for it a couple of weeks ago, so I've just come out of isolation 2 days ago. Everyone's very different with how they react to COVID, what sort of symptoms they display. In my own case, I felt dreadful for 1 day, really out of sorts for around 3 or 4 days, and then tired and drained for some time, and I'm still not feeling 100%. I won't give any clinical advice because I'm not medically qualified, but there have been significant progresses made during the last couple of years around managing COVID. Fewer people are really ill now, and thankfully hospitalisation is much rarer now, largely down to the vaccination programme. So on a personal basis, I'll continue to wear face masks in crowded places, to carry hand sanitizer with me at all times, and avoid hugging. Everyone must make their own decisions about how to live life now. But for those of us who do worry about COVID, I'd suggest consider carrying on with being careful, but whilst not withdrawing from life altogether. It's a trade-off. Social isolation in itself is really testing. I haven't seen family members for 2 weeks because of the COVID, and it's really hard. I think it was a little easier when everyone was isolating and staying at home, but when you see life around you going on, it is hard to do that, but it does soon pass. It really is a trade-off, as I said a moment ago, but being careful, you can still have a social life, albeit on a reduced level than it was before. It's a changing world. Basically, take the precautions that feel right for you, and don't feel intimidated by others into doing things that you feel uncomfortable with. So on to the third issue, the war in Ukraine. There are some things that you can do both to help others and to manage your own anxiety levels. As I mentioned earlier, don't watch the news too much, don't get addicted to it, because it is full of dreadful stories. Firstly, remember that whatever action you decide to take personally, it's extremely unlikely to affect how Vladimir Putin conducts his military actions. It really is heartbreaking to see the impact on Ukrainian people, but there may be things you can do to help. If you're able to, donating money to a charity can really help to provide humanitarian aid to people who are suffering. Even if it isn't a lot, just think of it this way. If everyone in the UK gave 50p to that cause, £33 million would be raised. So never think that any amount is too small. It does add up, and it makes a significant difference. Now, having said that, because money is so tight for many of us right now, donating cash may not be an option. As an alternative, some charities are taking donations of various items to transport over to the Ukraine, such as clothing and medical supplies, so you could try checking that out in an area near you. You can find information on the internet about that. If neither of those suggestions are good for you, perhaps you could do something to raise funds to help. It could be a sponsored walk, perhaps baking some cakes, a sponsored slim, maybe helping to run a jumble sale or another way. There is a website with a list of fundraising ideas, and it's called cafod.org.uk. That's cafod.org.uk. And there's an A to Z list of fundraising ideas which you can use to think of a way you can help to raise money for any charity or any cause of your choice. Please bear in mind that although this war is horrible, it is across the other side of Europe. There are other atrocities going on all over the world too, including the Yemen, Afghanistan, Palestine, Ethiopia, and many other places too. It seems to have brought it home to us much more significantly because it's taking place in Europe, but it is a long way away. The rhetoric that we hear on the news, the terminology that the national leaders use is scary, but saber-rattling and tough talking is always the case in situations like this. Please always bear in mind that escalation of the aggression isn't going to be productive for either side. Neither side would be a winner if it did escalate. So, although I'm not a military expert, I would suggest that it's highly unlikely it would escalate because no one would benefit from that. Now, my final piece of advice, when things in the world are going on like this, and this is really important, is to talk to someone. Don't bottle up your worries, don't bottle up your concerns, and talk to someone. Please, please talk to someone. Some people are lucky and have someone living with them, perhaps a relative, a friend, a confidant who they can talk to, but many people don't. There are people who you can talk to, however, who can reassure you. There are a lot of charities such as the Samaritans, Mind, and others who are here to help and support people who are feeling afraid and anxious. Please feel free to contact me at Second Thoughts East Yorkshire if you need to chat. I'm always happy to help. I'll be back with more videos in due course, but please leave any comments or suggestions for future videos. We're always looking for ideas for future videos to produce. So until I see you again, take care, stay safe, and good mental health. Bye-bye for now.